Hey, good morning, folks. This is Richard Hall here from Stonehenge, Aotearoa, and I'm going to bring that a bit closer. How's that? How's that? Yeah. Well, we're having a few audio-visual problems at the moment, but we've got some special stuff I want to show you later on about Mars, because all of you will be aware that we've just landed on that planet, or NASA certainly sent some stuff out there, and making some amazing discoveries and so on, or searching for life. And a lot of people say, well, why are we spending all this money going to Mars, and what are we trying to discover out there? Well, number one, of course, is the big question is that Mars is the planet that is most like the Earth. And as we look out there, it's got dramatic landscapes, although often the pictures we get back look rather plain, and that's because we obviously put the spacecraft down in an area that's safe, but it's got gigantic volcanoes and canyons and so on. But the most interesting thing about it of all is everywhere we look, there is this evidence of water on Mars at some time. And this means that once upon a time, Mars was more like the Earth. Right? There was large bodies of waters, even small seas and things like that. And the question is, did life evolve on Mars? And if did life evolve, or is it the same as the Earth? You see, this is a great question, because the only life we can study at the moment is that we find on our own planet. Right? But what's out there amongst the stars and so on? Where does life, is it a natural process that appears? Because one of the interesting things about the Earth is that life didn't just sort of appear at any old time. The moment conditions on Earth were capable of supporting life, it appeared. Now this either suggests it's a forced process, or possibly the life came from somewhere else, from a comet or something like that. And so we want to know if the same sort of processes have taken place on Mars, and that, of course, it gives us lots and lots of ideas of what might be out there in space as well. Now, the other thing is, of course, we're talking about sending people to Mars as well, to setting up a base there. And, of course, with the coronavirus, you can quite imagine the last thing we want to do is to bring back Martians here on Earth, all right? And that would be pretty deadly. Yeah, because we just, again, we don't understand if the biology is similar to ours, we could be introducing a virus. And you'll know from history, certain places where human beings, Europeans, have arrived somewhere in another country and so on, and then taken with them diseases which are nothing to us but absolute killers for other people. So we want to know about that as well, and looking after that. But the big question is about space and time, and what's out there in space. And when I look out at night and I look out there's vast numbers of stars, and on a good night, you can see a few thousand stars from your night sky. But in our galaxy alone, the star system we're in, there's something in the region of 200,000 million stars. And of course, one of those stars is our sun. That's what a star is. They're essentially suns. They're not all just like our sun. They vary and so on. But almost certainly most of, if not all of them, have planetary systems. Now, up until very recently, whether or not there were planets around other stars was simply conjecture or theory. We theorised there should be, but we didn't know because our technology was not great enough. That's just changed in the last few years. We now have detected thousands of planets around other stars out there. So in our galaxy alone, there's 200,000 million stars. There are literally trillions of planets out there. So the great question is, what's out there? Yeah? Is there other worlds similar to the Earth, or alien life forms and so on? And of course, those are some of the questions we've been asking ourselves at the moment. Anyway, we'll stop for a couple of moments and we'll listen to a little piece of music, and then I'll come back and have a chat with you.
Let me say
Hi folks, you're back with Richard and the night sky. So we were talking about some of the things that we're looking for on Mars, and it opens some of the biggest questions about what's out there, how unique this planet is. But one of the things that I think often we don't really understand is time itself. You know, when we look at our planet, the Earth, and we look at this environment, you imagine it's always been like that. Well, it has for most of human civilization, but you've got to remember that it only represents a very small part of the history of the Earth. For most of the Earth's history, and we're talking about something over 2 billion years, the Earth was what we call an ice ball. It was completely frozen down. The oceans were frozen and so on. And life was limited to surviving at the bottom of oceanic trenches deep beneath. Now, the reason for this is that our star, the Sun, slowly over millions upon millions of years, slowly increases in brightness. This happens with all stars, all right? Now, if we go back over 4 billion years to when our Sun was a baby, as it were, it was only about 65-70% its current brightness, all right? That means that you look at that, the temperatures on Earth were plummeted down, and so it's cold. On the other hand, if we go to Venus, all right, Venus, with a lot of evidence that at that time, Venus, which is closer to the Sun than the Earth, was a warm place, just perfect for supporting water, and good evidence there was water and possibly even life on Mars. So maybe once upon a time, it was Venus was the place to be. That was going to be the place which everything was existing and so on. But then slowly, over millions and millions of years, the Sun slowly brightened. And what happened, of course, is that Venus turned into the nearest thing to hell we can imagine, all right? Because what happened was super global warming eventually reached a point where the oceans began to boil away, and now the temperature on Venus is hot enough to melt lead, all right? So, and any life on there, of course, has been totally extinguished. But of course, as the Venus was losing life, the Earth was being reborn. It was warming up. The ices began to retreat, and then we see this explosion of life on the planet. All right. So just to put it into perspective, what we have to bear in mind is that tiny fraction of time which we actually experience. So for half of the Earth's history, right, it was an ice ball. There may have been life here, but it would have only been a microscopic, right? And then something in the region of, as it warmed up, about 350 million years ago, 400 million years ago, the complex life forms began to form, and we began to see life invading the surface of the planet. It began to turn green. But that period, when we call a green planet, represents something like in the region of 1,000th of the history of the Earth, all right? So it's only a small part of that. And eventually we got more and more complex forms of life until in the end we came along. But if you take the whole of human history from, well, you know, before written history, when first civilizations began to appear, that actually represents in the age of the Earth only 1/1,000,000th of the Earth's history. So that's worth thinking about, because if some alien race came across space to visit the Earth at some random point in time, they've only got about a 1 in 1,000,000 chance of finding us. And of course, that same fate that affected Venus is going to happen to the Earth, because as it slowly warms, eventually everything will be driven off here on Earth. So again, we're looking at this point in time. So looking out and wondering what's out there in space and so on. Now, looking out there at this vast multitude, I know that Isaac Asimov put it very, very clearly. He said there are only two possibilities as far as alien life is concerned. Either we are alone or we are not. Both are equally terrifying. And the reason why both of these are equally terrifying, I'll try to explain to you after we've listened to another little piece of music first. So. Okay, folks, you're back with Richard and the night sky. Now, just before the last piece of music, I talked about the words, first of all, when he talked about intelligent life out there in space, that there's these two possibilities, either we are alone or we are not, and that both possibilities are equally terrifying. So let's have a look at the reasons why they're equally terrifying. Number one, let's take it, we are not alone. Okay, well, I think this is all drawn up with this War of the Worlds, as demonstrated by H.G. Wells. You see, if you actually read A War of the Worlds, when the Martians arrived here on Earth and began to take over, and you keep on saying, this is terrible, but everything the Martians did was actually what we do to other living things on this planet. All right, and all H.G. Wells did was turn the British Empire on its upside down, and the Martians came here and did what we do to everything else. So the thing is, you see, if something turned up here which was vastly superior to us, and it would have to be in order to traverse the interstellar space, the question is, will they actually see us as being intelligent and smart? All right? Or will they decide that, hey, this is a nice planet, we can colonise it, or we've got to get rid of this vermin which seems to be destroying the planet, right? You know, so that is the other big danger, that something coming here will not see us. They will view us in exactly the same way as we view other living things on this planet, animals and creatures, right? So, as in H.G. Wells' story, when the Martians began to farm human beings in order to eat them, well, that's exactly what we do to animals down here, isn't it? So that's the one terrifying point. Aliens will not look like us, and if they can get here, they're going to be vastly superior, and our technology is going to appear to them much the same way as we're looking back at simple, smaller life on here on planet. They wouldn't see us as being advanced at all. So that's one nice possibility. The other possibility, of course, is that we are alone, and that's a pretty terrifying thing as well. And the reason for it is that our science tells us that life should evolve just about anywhere out there, and with the passage of time, intelligent life must evolve. So if we are alone out there, it means something must happen whereby that intelligent civilization disappears, right? In other words, we are on our course of catastrophe. Now, this would mean, for example, a good example, if you look at human beings, at the history of human beings, what have we got? We've got what we have most of all in movies about the past, war. And if you just look in the last century before us, the great wars that have taken place, and as technology has become greater, so the devastating effects of weapons have become greater and greater. So, of course, we, on occasions, become very close to nuclear war. That's one possibility, that people, an alien civilization eventually wipes themselves out with nuclear weapons and so on. The other possibility is that because they can't control things, they destroy their own environment. And, of course, that's another thing which we're doing at the moment. We all talk about global warming, overfishing, overdoing this and so on. Hey, you can't wipe out most of the living things on this planet and don't think it's going to have an effect as you begin to release all these gases into the atmosphere. So again, it may be that a so-called intelligent civilization reaches a point whereby the civilization collapses because it destroys its own environment. And of course, the moment it does that, it cannot recover. And the reason why it can't recover, of course, is because, well, all the natural resources which allowed that to come into place in the thing have all gone. All right? And so that's really what happens with us at the moment. Now, just to finish off, folks, before we go, I just want to briefly mention what we've got coming up. If you'd like to learn more about these space things and have a check out there what might be out in space, and I've got a few other interesting things to tell you about as far as aliens, even to suggest, well, we maybe talk about this next time, that the possibility aliens have actually already been here. But anyway, Stonehenge, we're open for tours into the past from on Tuesday through to Sunday, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we do the stars every Friday and Saturday evening. All right? But you do need to book in for those star evenings. And of course, we've got magnificent night skies coming up. One other thing I should mention to you is that coming up next Friday, special presentation. We're looking at Maori astronomy, the Polynesian navigations into the world. It's called the Whale Riders, and Kay Leather will be giving a special presentation upon how people navigated their way across the Pacific and here to New Zealand. So we've got that coming up soon. And then of course, later on in March, we're going to have the autumn equinox. All right, so I'm going to have some special presentations there. But I'll be telling you all about that at our next radio programme. Having said that, I'm going to sign out and we'll catch you up again soon.
Silent